Welcome everybody to another episode of the NWO show, your source for everything New World. Coming up this week, we're going to actually be talking about a fair few things. At the moment, you'll probably notice that there's a bit of a difference at the moment. We are missing Commander A's this week. At the moment, he is currently indisposed, but basically discharging his duties as a professional right now. He's, putting in the overtime at this point in time. So, hopefully we might catch him sort of like later on in the show, but you never know. But we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Anyway, let's get on and talk about New World. We have a few things to talk about, just quickly, in actual fact. With regards to kind of like free stuff and things that you can potentially get, that we can, let you know about. First off is, if you have not collected it, the winter farewell Prime loot package is still available. So if you have Prime, if you have Amazon Prime in any way, shape or form, you get like essentially sort of like Prime loot for various different games, not just New World, but there is a New World one going on at the moment. You should definitely go and pick that up. What you get from it, let me just share with you what you get. Here we go. This is a tweet relating to obviously the collection of stuff that you can get from the loot. From the Prime Gaming loot. 10 Azoth vials, a runestone stopwatch, which helps when it comes to creating, basically like crafting gear, especially armor. You essentially get a free kind of, it essentially locks your attributes on that craft to Constitution, which is useful for some certain things. You get 500 Umbral Shards, 3 Wildwood, which is a sort of like semi-rare sort of wood drop, 3 Protective Straw Wreaths, which is essentially just, housing decoration, and some Breakfast Bread, which gives you some boost on, I believe it is Gathering. So it gives you some gathering luck in some way, shape or form. So if you have Prime Gaming, then definitely go and pick that up. One of the other things about that's going on with New World at the moment, which actually ends tomorrow, is that New World is actually 50% off on all editions. So if you haven't actually taken the plunge to purchase New World in some way, shape or form, or maybe you're potentially purchasing it as a gift for a friend, because you can kind of do that in Steam, you can purchase any of the editions 50% off. And I mean, for the most part, unless you're talking to an absolute sort of, super toxic kind of ultra hardcore player who has, hit the absolute limits of this game, like time and time again, most people will say that you get a lot of value out of the initial sort of ticket price for New World. Definitely if you're one of those sort of people who thinks like, if I spend like £1 or $1 per hour, and that's a good kind of like exchange for the amount of money that I spend on a good experience in a game, you will get that and bucket loads more out of New World. So check it out. Like, it's obviously 50% off on all editions right now. Yeah, just good value investment, good time. Other than that, there was some actual Amazon news relating to some kind of like business style stuff that we'll quickly gloss through. Essentially what was going on is that Amazon had confirmed a whole bunch of layoffs, basically impacting 9,000 people in AWS, Twitch, and other units. Actually, essentially, it almost, previously it also, they also really revealed that they were going to be losing 18,000 people as well. So, yeah, a fair amount of people. Amazon's sort of downsizing to some degree. So, yeah, thankfully, a lot of that doesn't seem to have in any way impacted AGS as such. Maybe a little bit in terms of AWS, but I highly doubt it's kind of like affected them or affected New World in their capability or capacity of being able to sort of bring up and down servers, that kind of thing. So, but one of the other things as well is that where is it? Twitch. Twitch's CEO Emmett Shear has also left the company. He's essentially cites basically that he wants to spend more time with his family. He has a newborn child which he wants to, be there for, which is very understandable. So the current president of Twitch, Dan Clancy, is now taken, sort of charge and taken over the CEO sort of position. And literally the Monday after that, he let go 400 staff from Twitch, which, citing the fact that they need to sort of downscale some of the stuff, some of the business sort of dealings, that kind of thing. Yeah, so a lot of change, sort of a lot in the negative. I feel for the people who like lost jobs and that kind of stuff. So, hopefully the sort of like packages that you get from Amazon after sort of, becoming redundant is okay. But yeah, good luck on wherever you go after that. But yeah. Other than that, let's get into the main story, or the main kind of like I think the thing that the bit of news that kind of stands out, I think, and the kind of news that stood out today, or at least stood out sort of this week in terms of New World anyway, is that PTR has had an update on the March 16th, which was last Thursday. They added a bunch of things, some things which are actually very, very beneficial for the update coming in at the end of the month. Essentially the season 1 update, right? So we jump to the patch notes real quick. Here we go. So if we check this out, this is the March 16th PTR update for the season 1 Fire and Fellowship, right? They have added the Fury of the Spriggan event, which should be interesting. I'm interested to see how that differs from regular from the other kind of like world boss events, because essentially it is a world boss event. We'll see how it plays out, sort of whether it's different, that kind of thing. We also have some updates to the Imperium Forge expedition, which is pretty cool. Some notable fixes for like the Silver Crows. Some AI updates, and especially with the Ifrith fight. I think there was a fair amount of kind of things. If we want to kind of go through the sort of like the big ticket items in this, I would have to say that the sort of big ticket items there were some like weapon changes. The flourish and finish on the rapier has, I'm fairly certain if you've kind of been keeping up to date with New World, you'll kind of know this, but like they've been kind of not too sure as to what to do with this particular ability on the on the rapier as such, because it has CC and it has damage, right? So it's, and with the change to how AGS kind of want to see, how want to kind of like their kind of grand plan for how weapons need to be sort of changed. So that's how the sort of like how they want to sort of separate weapons from being damaged weapons and CC weapons, right? This weapon kind of fell between the two, and it didn't feel like it could be either one or the other. So what they've kind of done is they've reduced the damage, added the CC back to it, right? Whereas previously it was a high damage but didn't have any CC in it, and people were complaining about it essentially. So the Flourish and Finish now has CC, but it has less damage now. That was one of the sort of like, I guess one of the more sort of like, the more sort of impactful kind of changes to a lot of people's sort of gameplay. A lot of people run dexterity as their sort of like their focus, and you know, when you're running dexterity, especially if you're running a ranged kind of build, you are looking to use the rapier as a weapon to either finish people off or to use abilities on it as a means of escape, that kind of thing. So a lot of people kind of affected by this, a lot of people affected by the Flourish and Finish, the sort of things, expecting there to be CC when there isn't, and so they've kind of added the CC back, dropped the damage. It's produced a bit of an issue, which we'll get to later. But moving on from there, we have elemental attunements. They got a 4% nerf. They actually, quite interestingly, the Shard of Consecrated Iron is now an eligible drop for players of all levels. It was previously only an eligible drop for lower level players and only on named AI. That was how it was coded previously, but now it is going to be a drop for all players at all levels, and probably not for just for named AI, but for a lot of other things, right? What this means is essentially, you know, when season 1 kind of kicks off, the Shard of Consecrated Iron will be dropping a lot more, so it'll be much more, a lot less of a rare drop. It'll be much more sort of available. And available for crafters. And what this means for crafters is the Shard of Consecrated Iron is actually allows you to add the freedom perk, right? I'll quickly show you here with this is just checking out New World database, the Shard of Consecrated Iron New World database. Adds the freedom perk, so that is a 10-second increase in your basically ability to get out of slow stuns and roots. And if you consider that this is added to armor, you know, you can add up to about you can boost this up to about 50% essentially. Which, when it comes to sort of PvP, that's huge, right? Especially when you're in a situation where you have a lot of changing of the meta, and people are maybe looking for an additional perk or a perk that could actually become very usable and very powerful when it comes to PvP. And obviously, getting out of slows, stuns, and roots faster, especially up to 50% faster, is a big thing, right? Right, moving on. Probably one of the things that we were hoping for, and it was one of the things that I think a lot of people thought was a little bit kind of, well, was quite disappointing when they initially saw it, was that initially flame cores were bind on pickup, right, which prevented a lot of utility with them, right. This has now been changed, so they are no longer bind on pickup. You can potentially trade them, and there has been a place created on the on the trading post for the flame cores. So you will now be able to trade them openly on the market, which is fantastic. It also means that it is going to be a source of currency, and a source of being able to a source of it's basically going to be a means to grind to be able to make money, a different source of money in this game, or a different source to be able to make gold in the game, right? And then the big one, which I think a lot of people have been, were kind of hoping for, especially sort of the people who do a lot of PvE as well as PvP, is that there were some changes to the passive season XP. But the big one in the list of changes to that is that they've added passive seasonal XP source from just regular player XP, right? So what that means is that every 10,000 player XP, so basically not every time you just like do almost anything, but like you have to kind of work up to 10,000 XP. But every time you go past that 10,000 player XP, you earn an additional 25 seasonal XP towards your season pass. AGS have said, like, from like literally in the patch notes, that it is an experimental change. They want to see how it lands. They want to see whether it's not going to promote certain styles of gameplay way above the others, or is basically diminish certain aspects of how people play the game, or severely impact certain areas of the game. Like, we don't want somebody to find a means of being able to absolutely crush seasonal XP by doing one specific thing in the game, and then have like every single server just have tons and tons of people just basically crowding a certain activity or a certain location to do a certain thing, because it will degrade the experience for everybody, essentially. So they're looking to see how this goes about, how this plays on the PTR, and whether they see any sort of worrying signs of people using it to grind very, very quickly the seasonal XP and get to 100 extremely quickly. Obviously, there's going to be people who are going to get to 100 pretty damn quickly, because this is an MMO after all, and there are people out there. Some of you out there are like horrendous grinders, and I both love and hate you in some way, shape, or form. I can't do what you guys do, but like, damn, that level of dedication is impressive. But yeah, that was kind of the PTR sort of changes as it stands. It's kind of I think the additions and the changes to the sort of season patch, season 1 Fire and Fellowship patch is kind of progressing pretty well. I think there's definitely kind of areas that they do need to kind of change, and I'm not sure whether AGS are kind of looking at that, or kind of like still considering or making up their minds about that. There's definitely sort of conversations going on in the community about whether the amount of gear slots, sort of sets that we are able to have is enough or not. I certainly think it's not, but we'll see we'll see what side of the fence AGS will come down on when it comes to actually launching the seasons patch. Hopefully they kind of see a bit of sense, right? What else we had is a new Forged No Tournament video, in actual fact. Let me just chuck that up, and let's have a little gander of that as well. Boom, there we go. So, this Forged No Tournament video was specifically about seasons. They essentially sort of touted this as basically being a let's full screen this. They essentially sort of explained that this particular video should be a good refresher for anybody who doesn't know about seasons yet and needs to get kind of like a quick sort of a quick idea as to what seasons are, what are kind of like what are the big hitting kind of items, ticket items in seasons, and what they should be kind of expecting, right? It obviously sort of with regards to, hang on, let me just find my notes. Who you have actually in the on this new Forged and Eternal video is David Verifali, the guy in the center. He is the creative director. You have Patrick Smedley on the right. He is the lead seasons designer for kind of moved on from, I think, lead AI lead at some point. And Phil Bolus on the left-hand side, who is a product owner for New World. And essentially, they're going over season one, which is the overall theme being Fire and Fellowship, and that's the name of it, obviously. The narrative arc is essentially centered around the sort of Fellowship side of things, the Fire kind of side of things being very much the epitome of the Fire sort of side of things is basically being represented in this new season by the new expedition, which is the Imperium Forge. The Imperium Forge is going to basically be a new expedition, and it's going to be one that pretty much out the gate is going to be available to be mutated as well, so that's going to be pretty cool. There's also going to be in season one a couple of seasonal sort of events, those events being the Rabbit's Revenge Easter season event, as well as the new Angry Earth Fury of the Spirit, which is going to be the boss, like the world boss event. The seasons will be so the gods basically said that the seasons are going to be a quarterly update. So essentially every quarter, every 3 months of the year, you're going to be getting a new update to the game with content additions. And they sort of say from the outset that all the playable content in seasons are going to be free, which is fantastic, because that means that there is no situation or potential possibility of AGS sort of segregating and separating sort of like the player base out into different areas of the game, or denying sort of people who have purchased into the seasons to like basically play the content, but deny the other people who haven't from not being able to play the content. So, because that's one of the aspects of sort of season passes and that kind of thing that of old that have kind of led to the death of games, is essentially you start to sort of separate and segregate out your community, and in doing so your community feels like the game is basically dying or dead, or just essentially doesn't have anywhere near the activity available, and that's because the possibility of everybody being able to interact with each other has dropped significantly. So the fact that all the playable content will be free means that everybody's going to be able to play the content regardless of whether they purchased into season one or not. So that's great. The reward system. So they kind of they talked a little bit about the reward system. Reward systems basically have 2 tracks, right? It's essentially a regular, a typical sort of progression sort of rewarding system that you would see in other games. It has the 2 tracks, which will be the free track, and it has the premium track. So the free track, you're going to be getting things like cosmetic armor, cosmetic stuff like armor, like cool cosmetic stuff. You're going to be getting armor sets and stuff like that, weapons and stuff. You're going to be getting a house pet is included in the free track, I believe. A bunch of resources, various different things like umbral and gypsum, dyes, that kind of thing. The premium track, it's going to be similar to the free track. You're going to be getting the free track as well as the premium track if you purchased in. The premium track will include a lot of additional stuff as well, alongside the free track stuff. This will also include a new tent skin. I think there's only 1, maybe 2 free tent skins so far or yeah, one or two like tent skins so far. Like there's obviously some premium tent skins, but like, you know, the nice thing about the season pass is you buy in and you're getting a whole bunch of stuff, not just the tent skin, right? So with that, you're getting a tent skin, you're also getting tool skins, you're getting weapon skins, etc., and you're also potentially getting a really cool skin right near the end, which is related to a character in the sort of like in the narrative arc, right? The story arc, right? The season pass obviously has 100 levels, and unlike some sort of season pass progressive reward systems, you're actually getting, whether you pay into the season pass or whether you're using the free track, you're getting rewards on every single level. Yeah, so every single level you're getting rewards all the way up to level 100. The free gears, the free kind of reward near the at the end of the on the free track is amongst some of the other things is a free gear slot, gear set slot, sorry, which is huge, obviously. The other kind of thing is on the premium, as I said, you're getting a bunch of things as well as a distinct premium skin that relates to a character called Sky, and that's a character that you meet during the season's journey, like the narrative arc. So ways to level up, you can go through doing the journey. Sort of the journey is divided into chapters, and you're basically going and doing various different things to complete specific tasks. Some of those tasks will be completed while you're doing the narrative arc, but some, are not, and you kind of have to go and do various different things. You have an activities card, which is sort of similar to bingo cards, but like you essentially have a bunch of specific quests or specific tasks that you can do, and essentially you go and do those and you collect the rewards after doing them. But the nice thing is that you can both use you can sort of like chop and change and change out some of those tasks if you don't like them. And if you complete like a row of tasks or a column of tasks, basically if you complete a line of tasks in one way, shape or form, it needs to be like a straight line of some form, you get bonus XP. So, it rewards you kind of like pick and choosing sort of and completing things, certain things, and adds a little bit of strategy to it as such. But yeah, there's also, obviously, as we've said before, with the update to the PTR, you're also adding sort of like drops of 25 season XP every 10,000 sort of player XP. So just going and doing things means that like you're getting that kind of like consistent sort of drip of progression in the season. So that's going to be feeling pretty good, I think. I would say that the probably the one person who was most outspoken about like wanting this particular change is a particular content creator on here on YouTube, Brian from Ginger Prime Gaming. So thank you very much. He showcased and put out his his feedback about the seasons on the official forums, and clearly a lot of it kind of gelled quite a lot with a lot of people. Yeah, cheers Brian. Other than that, so according to AGS, in terms of the season, like it's the season 1 should potentially take around 50-ish hours on average for an average person or an average player to sort of to go through. Obviously, when we're talking about average, we don't mean like the mean average, like more median kind of average, like rather the people out there who are persistent grinders, who enjoy sort of like no lifing this game somewhat, are going to be free and clear of completing their seasons like the season sort of track and all that kind of stuff very quickly, right? It's not going to take you 50 hours. But if you're an average player, if you're a fairly chilled player that, you know, isn't sort of like min-maxing all the time, then you're going to probably not... The AGS are gunning for it to basically take you around about 50-ish hours, you know. But even if you're not, and even if you're like much more casual and you only play weekends and that kind of thing, and it's only sort of, you know, fairly sort of short stints and such, like these seasons are going to be, you know, every 3 months. So you're going to have 3 months to be able to complete these. And if you should be like, I think the way that AGS calculated it is casual players should probably be able to find 50 hours of gameplay in 3 months, you know, and that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I don't know how it makes sense. I don't know whether it makes sense to you guys. If, you know, how you feel about it, drop a comment, whatever, you know, tell us on the Discord, just go for it, you know, let us know, right? But yeah, so there is plenty of time for casuals to be able to kind of complete this. Yeah, and so one of the things about the sort of like the sort of like the big chunks of XP or the big chunks of progression that you're gonna get is apparently completing the journey. Like, so the big narrative arc that's been built into the season pass is that you will get approximately 50% of the XP that you need to complete the season pass just from the journey. So, you know, if you're looking to complete the season pass, doing the journey like straight off the bat is probably your best bet in terms of like, you know, punching and jumping like, you know, leaps and bounds towards the end. But you can still hit level 100 by playing mostly all PvP, even maybe potentially not even, you know, doing the narrative arc in that regard. Obviously, as we've said, like, you know, you're going to be getting potentially passive XP for doing all sorts of things, including PvP. There's going to be, you know, activities on the activity track and potentially also on the some of the other things, which is like the challenges. A lot of the challenges are sort of like PvP related, so you know, a lot of those challenges are going to give you like chunks of season XP, that kind of thing. So, you know, you're not gonna, it's gonna be a case of like, you're not gonna be forced to have to do the narrative arc in order to actually complete the season track all the way to 100. So, you know, any sort of people out there who hate PvE, you know, chill out. You're gonna be able to do it. You've got 3 months after all, right? So, yeah, just keep doing what you do. But if we're going to go into, we might as well talk about the narrative arc. They talked about the narrative arc in the you know, specifically in the Fortunate Turn video. Narrative arc is basically centered around Grace O'Malley, who is a character that you meet, you know, at the start of the. She's a character in the revitalized, remade kind of NPE, right? So if you haven't played the NPE since the launch of the game, like, you probably are not really that well versed on Grace O'Malley unless you jumped in to play with some of the new servers that came out. But essentially, what you're kind of doing is you're teaming up with Grace O'Malley to create a new mercenary outfit, and this mercenary outfit is called the Silver Crows. Along the way, you kind of help secure more, find and sort of like secure more mercenaries for the outfit, and you ultimately help a character called Sky fight and defeat a powerful new enemy called Faceless, and that's kind of like the overarching sort of like that's the non TL spoiler kind of like TLDR of the narrative arc that's going through season 1. On the you know, on the Fortunate Turn video specifically, Patrick mentions a very enjoyable moment in the journey where AGS is actually employing like more cinematic kind of camera movements and framings, that kind of thing. And I noticed it straight away when they started doing it. And although there's a little bit of, you know, work to do with the sort of character animations and character models and that kind of thing, I think it's definitely a great sort of like a leap forward in terms of their creative and sort of stylistic and cinematographic kind of like ventures and storytelling, which is something that, you know, at least from a narrative side of things, New World has been like been needing. Like there's been, you know, New World has been like sorely lacking that for a while, and it's apparently a direction that AGS kind of ultimately want to be moving towards in terms of this cinematography and in terms of their what is it? Like their cutscenes, that kind of thing, right? So you know, when you see that, when you know, when the season 1 comes out, like definitely keep an eye out for that, because it can be really cool. Hopefully it's like, you know, it's polished up a little bit better than what I saw it by the time they actually release it. So yeah, fingers crossed. And I'm looking forward to more of that kind of stuff when it comes to sort of like the additional sort of like the next season pass and the story arcs, narratives and stuff like that, right? But yeah, one of the other kind of big things that they talked about in the video, and that's coming in seasons, is the new resource, and the new resource is called Flame Cores. It was basically touted as something similar to gypsum casts, but basically it can be traded into like specific locations to basically receive items or to sort of like imbue items with like an anti-Varangian kind of perk. The idea of this anti-Varangian perk is to essentially sort of like a human ward, or essentially like a Varangian ward kind of like a perk that basically allows you to sort of absorb more damage from them. This is to essentially help people who are struggling at sort of like the latter stages of the narrative arc to be able to defeat certain things, right? So if you're kind of like struggling in that regard, you know, swapping out to armor that has these sort of like this particular ward will definitely help you in terms of like finishing off the narrative arc, right? Other than that, the flame cores are actually going to also be used, although it wasn't actually mentioned in the video. The flame cores are also going to be actually used to be able to upgrade one of the new sort of heart rune abilities to essentially, you know, its maximum power, as it were. That one being the Firestorm. Yeah, it's Firestorm. So, you know, initially you're going to get the heart rune, the heart rune ability, and it's going to be a case of it's not at full power, and then you have to essentially, very much like kind of like Umbral Shards to some degree, I imagine, is you're going to be using those to be able to upgrade that that ability to its maximum power. But yeah, other than that, we also got something very interesting, and I think this is something that AGS is kind of like the first time that AGS has ever done this, and this is that they added a frequently asked questions at the end of it, but this frequently asked question was actually really, really interesting because of a particular reason, and I shall show you this now. Here we go. So this is the season pass reward track frequently asked questions. Obviously they've got the link to the Unfortunate Turner video, but one thing that they started doing is they're listing out all of the rewards for the free and the premium track. For the all the rewards for the free and the premium track down from level 1 to level 100, doing it in sort of blocks of 10 essentially, right? So it gives you essentially, they're telling you exactly what you're going to be getting, right? And not only that, but they also ended up actually doing something further than that, which is, what are the odds of rolling certain items in the premium rewards, right? Obviously, because you have chests, and when you open those chests kind of rolls, a certain kind of certain items, that kind of thing. And so they've given you the odds, the percentage chances of rolling various different things. And they've done this for every single chest that you're going to be getting. Say for example this. The living room set always grants a bookcase, dresser, drawer, chest, equal odd chance for the appearances on these sets, and giving you a list as to what those sets are going to be. You can go and look it up, that kind of thing. The die gifts, an equal 1 in 76 chance for any of these different colors. Premium die colors. The mutated chests, expedition chests, Lazarus instrumentality chests, all sorts of different things, right? But I believe this is the first time that they've ever done this. But it is good because it gives you all above board, and the nice thing is that as far as I can tell, they haven't done any kind of thing where they've said, a less than 1% or a greater than 10% chance, or less than 2% chance. And the concerning things when you see that sort of stuff, that sort of wordage in these sorts of things, is when especially when it comes to sort of things like opening chests, which are essentially like loot boxes, right? When a company puts odds on getting certain things from chests, and they've essentially decided to say less than 1%, you don't know whether that is a true, whether that's 1 in 1,000, which would be 0.1%, or whether it's a 1 in 10 million, or 1 in 100 million, or 1 in 10 billion chance of getting it. Less than 1 means anything from, a 0.00001% chance to anything from a 0.9% chance, right? So, and you're in the dark as to how ridiculously unlikely you're going to be seeing certain things, right? And from what I can see in all of this is that they've not actually done any kind of less than percentage chance, which is very, very encouraging to see, because they're being very open, very honest, very transparent about what the odds are, which is great. And some additional kind of stuff when it comes to sort of like the frequently asked question stuff. Can I replay or complete season passes? And it'll be a case of seasons will continue to evolve. Essentially, once the season pass ends, you won't certain things won't be achievable. Because they want to be rolling on and moving on to different stories, and obviously you're not going to have a sort of a period where the season is ended and another season hasn't started. So, you'll be going straight from the end of one season to the start of another season, and in doing so, you'll be losing certain things like the story arc and stuff like that to be able to do, and certain rewards in the reward tracks are going to be, basically lost. But yeah, so what can we expect from the future seasons? What kind of rewards can we expect? Various different things. I think they had a few sort of some feedback from the community as to sort of other things that they want to see. But yeah, as they say, the offerings are going to continue to evolve each season. And obviously to some degree, some things are going to be available in the season that's going to be very much based around the theme of the season as well. How do you buy the premium reward track? Well, it's purchased using Marks of Fortune. Obviously, the way that you could get Marks of Fortune is essentially maybe purchasing them with real life, with IRL cash via the in-game store, or as you have seen in drops and in Prime Gaming loot previously, like you get Marks of Fortune in Prime Gaming loot every so often. You also get Marks of Fortune in the as rewards in the actual sort of in the actual season pass. So I'll give you an example of this. Is like Marks of Fortunes are at the end of level 71 to 80. So yeah, level 80, 500 Marks of Fortune on the free pass, and 1,000 Marks of Fortune on the premium pass. So you're getting Marks of Fortune while doing the pass. So it is entirely likely that you could potentially complete the season pass on the free track and have enough Marks of Fortune along with some of the stuff that you may have saved from previous things like previous Prime Gaming loot, that kind of thing, to be able to potentially purchase the premium season pass at the end of it, all without paying anything, all without spending any IRL cash, and that is fantastic. That is an aspect of the season pass that I was hoping was going to be a thing, and it appears to be, so that's good. That's another thing, is can I buy the premium track late into the season, which is definitely a case. There's also even head starts, right? You can purchase a head start pass, which gains you 20 levels, like basically 1,000 marks per level, and you can buy additional levels for 1,000 marks. That is very similar to a lot of other games that do basically exactly the same thing. If I don't buy the premium track, can you still earn rewards? Yes, because there's a free track, which is great. If I buy the premium track, do I still get the rewards from the free track? Yes. Can I earn the rewards after they've ended? Not really. Some of them are unobtainable. Can I claim them after they've ended? Well, that's the thing. Like if you've already unlocked them but you haven't claimed them on the item claim section, you can actually pick them up in the item claim section after the season ends and when the next season starts. It's just a case of if you've gone, those will only be claimable until the end of the next season. So like you're not going to be able to claim the stuff that you've unlocked from season 1 if you're into season 3, for example, right? But yeah, the other kind of thing is, and this is kind of like a bit of an awkward one to kind of be able to sort of navigate, is how will the season pass work for multiple characters of the same account, right? So the season pass will work across multiple characters in the same world or region. So if you have a character in the same world or the same region, that season pass will be run concurrently on your characters, and whichever character that you've logged into will be able to sort of pick up those rewards. Obviously, that progress will not transfer if the player switches regions. So, be cautious about that. And obviously, right at the end, listing how ways that you can earn season experience, right? And they've even included that at the end, like earning a set amount of character experience. So I think AGS are feeling quite confident about that change from player feedback actually potentially making into the final the sort of like the live version of the season patch. So that looks to be pretty good. One of the other things that that's happened this week is AGS released an article about the design and lore of the Imperium Forge. Imperium Forge basically being the expedition that's coming with season 1, right? So what we're basically going to be getting is a very interesting expedition. It has its own particular lore. The lore centers essentially around the original use of the forge by the ancients. So essentially the forge is a construct of the ancients. And it was used to build their war machines, but fell foul of like the ravages of the epic war that the ancients had. Who they were fighting, whether they were fighting each other, we don't know. Still kind of a mystery in terms of the lore of New World. But essentially, it was rediscovered by a wizard called Mirrodin. Any of you out there may be thinking that like, that sounds a little similar. I definitely thought it sounded very similar to Merlin, you know. Mirrodin, Merlin. You can get the kind of you can get the kind of similarity there. And obviously I'm not the only one who sort of noticed this, and it was probably something that they built into it. They you know, AGS kind of saw this sort of, you know, this aspect of being able to potentially sort of borrow from myths and legends by this, and they included Mirrodin into here, which in the has a page in Arthuriana entitled Mirrodin and Merlin, a guide to the early evolution of the Merlin legend. So clearly there is a Merlin and sort of like a Arthurian legend sort of like tie-in to the expedition, to the Empyrean Forge as such, which is going to be quite interesting. But yeah, other than, you know, it being rediscovered by Mirrodin, Mirrodin essentially apparently unlocks the heart of the forge, and it connects to sort of like distant realms where sort of elemental and magical kind of powers like come through and basically give rise to like beasts that protect like the sort of like the deepest recesses of the Imperium Forge, right? And as it stands, when we sort of come to experience it, it is essentially it is held and coveted by the Vangarians as a site of great power that they're hoping to unlock. So that's kind of like the lore aspect of the Empyrean Forge. Design-wise, there's some interesting, unique kind of features to it. It's going to be an interesting sort of like a unique take on puzzles, at least sort of in relation to, you know, the puzzles that we generally tend to expect in New World. It's going to be requiring a kind of a level of coordination and a level of sort of like, you know, splitting up and teamwork as such between between the sort of like the team that's going in, which should be interesting. Yeah, it should be quite interesting. It also has a bunch of sort of environmental hazards. You can kind of understand with the sort of Empyrean Forge and it being quite deep underground kind of thing. There are environmental hazards like lava, that kind of thing, right? But there are apparently a bunch of environmental hazards that you have to kind of like navigate through while fighting through, and that's obviously creates an additional sort of challenge in that regard. You know, I kind of envisage very much like akin to sort of a little bit akin to like Indiana Jones sometimes, you know, with the huge kind of boulder and the sort of like the slicing kind of like blades and that kind of thing, like, but I imagine sort of like, much more sort of, it's probably going to be a hell of a lot more hectic because you're going to be fighting a whole bunch of things while doing all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. Yeah. What wasn't actually included, so one of the interesting things about like the article itself is that it clearly sort of did not mention any design of the bosses or design of any of the sort of like unique kind of mechanics that the boss inside the or the various bosses have inside of the Imperium Forge, right? So that is going to be an interesting kind of thing for people to experience and for people to work out. I guess they did not want to spoil that for people who were wanting to try that, sort of experience it and try and figure it out for themselves, right? The other kind of thing is that they didn't mention that the expedition is being tested with mutations, and so when it comes out, it'll be capable of being mutated straight away. Whether it does, who knows? I imagine AGS aren't going to start off with mutating it, but it will probably end up being on the mutation sort of roster, sort of cycle kind of thing. So we'll get there. It'll get there. One of the other things that happened a little earlier this week is that AGS has actually been asking for questions to go to a new community Q&A video. If you guys hadn't seen that, then that's been a thing that's kind of been happening. It sort of they stopped taking submissions on Monday, but they were also leveraging the official New World Discord as well for this. So they were kind of like experimenting, playing around with like using the sort of like forums feature of being able to create threads in Discord. So that was pretty cool. But they have been taking questions from Reddit. They've been taking questions from from the official forums and from YouTube comments, that kind of thing. So like they're trying to get as many different interesting kind of questions into the Q&A as they can, and obviously sort of structure it accordingly, right, to various different sections of the game and various different kind of like common questions and that kind of thing, right? I know I've submitted a few questions. I hope you guys were able to. We'll see what gets answered. We'll see what gets picked. We'll see what gets answered. Hopefully it's not all kind of like easy questions, because I think I think everyone gets disappointed if it's easy questions, right? So hopefully it isn't easy questions. Hopefully it's something kind of interesting. But we'll see. And other than that, we've got like some forum activity. There hasn't been that much sort of dev activity on the forums. But there's been some interesting sort of forum threads. One has been like, so if we go through the sort of like the top 3 kind of like threads that have been kind of like, a hive of activity over this week. We'll basically the top one at the moment is, please for the love of God make perks searchable in storage sheds already. And honestly, I do genuinely believe I'm very much in agreement. It is one of those things that I absolutely totally hate, the fact that we can't actually sort of search for perks and search for items that have certain perks in our storage sheds. It makes the sort of like the whole deal of sorting through all the sort of like various different armor that you have and that you've decided to keep, just it would make it all the better. Like, it would make it so much easier to be able to kind of deal with stuff, right? If you're looking for, if you've been very very sort of organized and made sure that you're getting rid of and removing and selling off like the items that you don't make certain sets, and you've kept the certain sets that you need to have, right? You know, you'll know what those perks are on those sets, and you can literally search for them. And most likely, there's going to be perks. There's going to be, you know, they're going to be very, very similar in terms of the perks, right? Having that ability to search it just means that it'll be so much easier to be able to kind of like not just organize, but kind of be able to get to the items that you want without having to sort of search through it for forever, which is like it'll be an absolute godsend. Like I know that they're trying to help out in that regard by, you know, having gear slot sets, but like the amount of gear slot sets is just like it's not. It's a good first attempt, but they need to expand on it, and they need to expand on it fairly soon after season 1 anyway. The next one is in fact this particular one, which is that Deadly Flourish needs to be looked at, and this goes back to, you know, when we're talking about the updates to PTR, and that the rapier has kind of been nerfed and then buffed and then sort of nerfed kind of thing to some degree, and like this is very much with regards to how a particular perk relates to how the damage on the rapier has been nerfed, right? It essentially means that that deadly flourish, a particular perk on the rapier, is now kind of useless. I would say that, you know, there's a fair amount of perks out there that are kind of useless at this point in time. But I think the reason why, you know, this is very much a sort of contested or very much sort of argued kind of point is that, yeah, fair enough, there's a lot of perks out there that, you know, are kind of useless, but this one has been very useful up to, you know, how Flourish and Finish is being changed, right? And so a lot of people have Deadly Flourish on their rapier, and, you know, when you know, Fire and Fellowship comes out, that'll be basically a worthless perk to have, which means that, you know, certain people's rapiers are going to go from being decent to being, you know, pretty terrible. So hopefully that gets changed. Hopefully that gets, you know, Deadly Flourish gets sort of like worked around and maybe potentially sort of renamed and have a different sort of attributes. Maybe something relating to sort of increasing the sort of like the capability or the capacity or the sort of like the potency of the CC. But we never know. We don't know. Like that's just a, you know, potential avenue that AGS could potentially go with regards to perks that, you know, were pretty decent and were quite loved, and then ended up basically being dumpstered because of a significant change to the meta, or change to sort of like, you know, how weapons are being looked at, right? So yeah, and the final one, it is, I think it's kind of like, it's going to be one of those things, right? It's going to be one of those things when it comes to sort of trying to balance long range versus melee. And, you know, it's one of those, I think it's like, it must be kind of awkward for AGS, because, like, you know, players complain about the musket in OPR, right? And so AGS nerfs the musket, and then not even before the patches got to live, you know, there are people complaining that, oh, it's just going to go back to bow PR, right? It's going to be the bows that are going to be OP. But in fairness, like the original poster here, Bradley, like he has said, like, you know, it's in desperate need of further adjustments, but it only needs like some minor percentage changes on certain things. Oh no, yeah, sorry, the couple of minor changes on the passives were not enough to move the needle. But yeah, it's just I think it's just a case of like you're always going to be struggling with people who have issues with dealing with players who are at a sort of a distance or using sort of long range setups, right? And to some degree, that is not really to some degree, right? There's very much a qualifier there, right? To some degree, that is very much a case of wondering if that person has a legitimate complaint, or whether they just are sort of can't think their way around a problem of being able to find a way to close the distance, right? To some degree, this is one of those sort of awkward scenarios of we don't have the sort of like the interesting sort of battlefield shaping kind of tools that we once did when we had like the smoke shot. And it would be interesting if you could actually use like have that kind of weapon or have that kind of thing on on like a fortification weapon, right? So because the thing is like if the only kind of battlefield shaping kind of utility is, say, for example, the smoke shot, then essentially it means that almost everyone needs to have a bow in some way, shape, or form to be able to sort of, you know, apply that kind of, you know, battlefield shaping to be able to kind of facilitate sort of closing the distance without getting shot down by bows or getting shot down by muskets, right? That could basically be mitigated by having some of that ability be sort of applied to the weapons and the weapons on the fortifications, right? And then you don't really see those weapons used that much. But if those weapons had the ability to be able to provide smoke cover, that kind of thing, it may actually provide a lot of utility to be able to allow members of your team to be able to basically close distance on long range players, right? But you never know. We'll see. But I definitely feel for AGS when it comes to sort of long range versus close range, and giving the community what they want with regards to nerfing the musket, only to find that people are now complaining about the fact that they're concerned that OPR is going to return to bow PR. Right? What can you do? What can you do? I have not heard anything from A's with regards to him getting back. I think he's just absolutely, just dealing with an absolute ton of stuff at work. And I feel for him in that regard. So hopefully he's good. He'll most likely make an appearance next week, as it were. But really kind of like the only other kind of thing that we're going to go through is a few kind of interesting things on Reddit. So we check on the sort of activity on Reddit. Aside from some of the memes there's some kind of good memes and stuff like that. There was a friendly reminder from a member of the community, as we see just here, that the game-breaking weapon swap FPS bug is still in the game. If you don't know about this bug, I can understand. Claiming it's game-breaking is a bit much, because you have to do you have to either be sort sort of very insistent about doing a very particular kind of thing while traveling to kind of really experience this and get affected by this bug. But essentially this bug relates to when you are swapping weapons while running around. And if you swap weapons very, if you very incessantly swap weapons around constantly while you're running, and I mean like a lot while you're running, you will potentially experience this drop in FPS to the point where you might have to restart the game to be able to, to fix it as such. And obviously, in that moment, it is game breaking, but it is game breaking to you and to you alone. And the only way that you are able to sort of like really get affected by that is by doing something that is not required by the game for you to do. Doesn't give you any advantage. It isn't a requirement to achieve any particular thing in the game. You're swapping weapons back and forth, like, extremely quickly. Like, if that's what you do, if you've gotten to the habit of doing that, like as you're running, then that's unfortunate for you. But like, a lot of people don't do that, and so a lot of people haven't experienced this. And this guy essentially is like, I'm absolutely dumbfounded that more people aren't bringing attention to this issue. Well, they're not bringing attention to this issue because they're not running around swapping their weapons back and forth, incessantly, like, every 5 times a second. Like, they have no need, there's no necessity to do so. So it's like, that's why people aren't sort of bringing it to AGS's attention, is because, it doesn't affect their gameplay. And it's not something that, occurs in regular gameplay for them in any way, shape or form. You only have to, you have to be very particular in, the sort of like the things that you do to be able to create that particular scenario. And a lot of people don't do it. So, yeah. The other kind of interesting thing is like, the bolding of certain things, because it's ruining the game experience for us. For all of us, in fact, right? I don't know. I don't think it's affecting other people. I think the sort of like the from what I've seen, from what I've read, like the bug only affects the person who is doing the weapon swapping. It's not affecting other people around them, other than just affecting their gameplay and affecting their character, right? People around them who remain unaffected but see their character essentially just lag out and sort of slow down and end up getting killed. And if it's unfortunate, if you have one of those sorts of people on your team in like a war or OPR or something of that form, and they're constantly dying because they're constantly weapon swapping, well, learn to not weapon swap like all the time. You don't need to be weapon swapping 5 times a second every single time you're running around. Like, there's no need. But yeah, I don't know. Some people on the internet are weird. One of the other kind of things is an interesting sort of an interesting take from a fairly new player about the Umbral Shard system, right? Claiming it to be basically his least favorite progression system in all MMOs. I kind of understand that. And it is good to get a fresh take from a relatively new player. And the thing is, it's not the issues that he has is not, or the issue that this new player has is not anything to do with, the mechanics of the system. It's the kind of the social elements of trying to progress using this that have kind of been brought up and exacerbated because of the system, right? I'll just read this. You'll get the kind of picture, right? So he's new to the game. Enjoy it. My main source of fun is in this game is the PvP. To be able to do that, I now need to make a bunch of different PvE sets, level them all the way up, and then have the capability to have excess shards. Feels like I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul for some content I don't really want to do. So basically, it's like, he doesn't really want to do PvE, but he's kind of forced to do PvE because PvE is the best way of being able to get these shards, and these shards are required to sort of, to upgrade his gear from 600 to 625, right? So, he spent a bunch of time in OPR, right? And he notes that it gets you a fraction of the amount of shards you need to even realistically get just one piece of gear to 625 in a reasonable time frame. I understand that. I always thought that the sort of like the amount of umbral shards that you get, like doing mutated expeditions versus anything else, is so hilariously sort of disjointed in terms of the amount that it's kind of like ludicrous, right? And he goes on, buying shards feels bad, just waiting 30 minutes, just waiting 30 minutes for running content that I'd attempt to run myself if I could, and not feel like I'm griefing the vets that have done the content a bajillion of times. He wants, so it's just a case of like he doesn't want to do sort of expeditions to get it kind of done, but like he also feels that like asking people to sort of handhold him through like say mutated expeditions feels kind of bad, because you're asking vets who have done this stuff a billion times to go and do it like a billion and one times and billion two times. But carries on the PvE side, no one actually wants you until you have 600 plus gear score, right? Even then, groups are going to choose people with higher gear score than you. So if you're at 600, kind of tough luck, right? Because they'll be choosing 610s, 615s, 620s, that kind of thing, right? So most non-M10 groups in the chat are looking for tanks. And this is one of those kind of things that has been brought up as well, as like, everybody wants to play the DPS role, right? There are the people who have kind of really gotten into sort of healing, who wants to play the healing role, but like nobody really wants to play the tank. And the reason why nobody wants to play the tank is because it's the most toxic role. And it's most toxic role not because you're toxic, or because like tanks, who want to play the tank role are toxic. It's because generally you need to, generally tanks get blamed for things going wrong when it was actually, the DPS in say an expedition or a healer that wasn't doing their job, right? And that's where the toxic kind of aspects of being a tank comes from when you're running expeditions in a sort of like a public group, right? But he goes on like, needing multiple gear sets for each dungeon also eats into all of your shards like super quickly as well, right? So, he loves the game. He's played Final Fantasy, he's played Lost Ark, he's played WoW, he's played Guild Wars, but he feels like in relation to some of the other kind of like sort of progression systems in the game, this feels very much very off, right? And I can understand that, and I think like that's probably one of the more awkward kind of things of being when it comes to sort of designing systems or designing kind of grinding or progression systems is, understanding and trying to sort of see where the social aspect of that kind of system is going to kind of be very caustic to newer players, right? And this is very much a good all-round kind of example of what I would consider to be good feedback about something, because this person kind of like this player kind of gives you a good understanding as to why he feels why like they feel like this, and why what's going on with regards to how the progression is being kind of halted and hindered, right? Which is it's very useful, and I do hope that like AGS does see this and does sort of hopefully it does spark some interesting conversations inside of AGS and you know, they look to maybe tweaking some stuff in game, but you never know. The only other kind of thing is an interesting kind of thing, and I thought this was really cool as well. And it's with regards to OPR maps. And it's nice visual of, you know, an OPR map in Windswood, which would be cool, right? I think that would be pretty awesome. It might be a little bit small as a map, but I think, like, you know, the chaos of running an OPR inside of a town would be fantastic. It'll be great because they haven't actually they would barely need to do much kind of additional work to kind of put those things together. Most of the work is done for them. They just have to sort of pull a few things out, and yeah, I think it would be kind of interesting. I think it'd be really interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you have any particular comments about it, I think it might have a bit of a. I wonder how many people would complain about long range long range builds in like OPRs like this. That'd be kind of interesting. But like, you guys have any suggestions out there, any comments about this, like, you know, definitely like let us know in the comment section, you know, on our Discord, wherever, right? You know, we'd love to hear from you guys. But other than that, like, pretty much at the end of the show, as I said, you know, it's unfortunate A's didn't get to be on the show today, but you know, it is what it is. He's out there being all doing it, you know, being all professional and shit, and I respect him for that. Anyway, guys, that'll about do it for me, at least. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the topics, and let us know, you know, your thoughts on all of these, especially about the Windswood OPR map. That is an interesting one. But yeah, you know, until next week, in actual fact, you know, have fun, and we'll obviously, I'll see you in the new world.